All right. Well, my name is Molly, but I will let you, Brian, introduce yourself first.
Well, hello, Molly. Nice to meet you. So, if you don't remember, Molly and I haven't done this in a while. We haven't had the band back together since September or October, I guess. I'm Brian. I'm a engineer. I have OCD, ADHD, depression, anxiety. I got all the good stuff mixed in. Um, and so I started doing this thanks to Molly. She was my peer advisor. I guess still my peer advisor actually. Um, and I just wanted to try to help any way I could. So I asked, could I help, and reached out, and then I started doing a couple of these with Molly, and we actually really liked doing it and could have some good banter back and forth. And so we're back again in 2022 after a couple month hiatus. So I hope everyone's doing well and hanging in there with the way everything is these days. And so, you have any questions, let us know. I got my coffee and I have Molly, so we're here.
Yeah, and I don't drink coffee, so he drinks enough.
For you. I got 2 mugs to take up your slack, so it's fine.
Yeah. So I am, like Brian said, I am a peer advisor at an OCD. So what that means is I am somebody who has OCD and has gone through therapy as well. So I am excited to be here to dust off our, dust off whatever you dust off before you do a talk again. And I'm excited to answer any questions that any of you guys have. And I see we have a couple already, so I will pull up some. So Leo said, can pure O make you believe or think you've committed crimes or false memories? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I mean, I don't have pure O, but I've had false memories about a lot of things. And it's one of those things, like the more you try to ruminate or think about those false memories, the more distorted they kind of tend to be. So you kind of tend to be more of the criminal. I think, like, the more you think about it, the more it gets twisted because your brain wants you to doubt it. So I would say, yeah, I mean, you can definitely have that. I have some memories that I know for a fact happened a certain way, but the more I think about them, the more twisted they become over time. And then when I ask people in my family, they're like, yeah, no, that's not how that happened. So I would say, yes, I think that is definitely a thing that can happen.
Yeah. And I think it's important to recognize that OCD can latch onto anything. So whether it's real events that have happened in your past or memories that your brain is kind of making up, it really can latch onto anything and everything. So committing crimes, doing something immoral, something blasphemous. I mean, all of these things that, are scary to talk about and can make people feel anxious just talking about it. Yeah, definitely can latch on to, can make you believe things that you've done that you actually haven't done. You are not alone in that, for sure.
Yeah, I would say the more it distresses you, the more OCD will latch onto it because it knows that it causes you distress and to be upset, and that's what it wants.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been having reoccurring intrusive thoughts, but they don't give me anxiety anymore. I just have to repeat the same word over in my head. Is that bad? What do you think?
It's almost like if they're not giving you anxiety, not quite like a backdoor spike where if you don't get anxiety from it, it makes you think that must be true all along, and that it makes you doubt that. But I would say the repeating the same word in your head, it's kind of what I have done before, like a ritual or something to either make sure something's locked or someone's safe or something. Like, I've done that before, and it's not bad. It's not helping because it is what you're doing to try to alleviate temporarily the stress, but it's going to come back again. And I mean, I've gotten ebbs and flows, and Molly will agree too. Like, sometimes certain stressors or certain intrusive thoughts can they can come in and they can go away and they won't bother you for a while, or you have ones you haven't thought about in years and they can spike up. So it's going to change over time. So they may not give you anxiety for a while because either you've gotten used to them and you've kind of been able to sit with them and they don't bother you anymore, or the fact that you just are so used to it that, like I said, it could spike up because you think, wait, why doesn't this bother me anymore? And then you get the backdoor spike, and then that makes you start to doubt whether you actually used to like that or whether that was something that you wanted all along. And I would say the repeating the same word over and over again, that's your compulsion that you're doing. And that's to alleviate the stress. So I would say it's not bad, but try not to do that. Try to avoid doing that as long as possible, whether you can, let it go for like 30 seconds, a minute, a couple minutes, whether you don't have to repeat it as many times. It's all the ERP. I mean, that's the whole thing of trying to alleviate it, because it's going to happen. You're going to have things pop up. You're going to have intrusive thoughts that they're never going to go away. It's just trying to manage how you deal with them and to function every day. And I still have them pop up all the freaking time. But it's how you choose to either ignore them or just accept that they're there, sit with them and go, okay, I'm moving them on. Like, I'm moving on my way. I know you're there. Yeah, I did, X or Y, and I'm not going to think about it anymore because I know you just want me to be uncomfortable. You want to cause me anguish. So I'd say it's all ERP. Try to not repeat it over and over again, or try to repeat it less, or try to, maybe if you have to repeat it, like sitting with that anxiety is going to be rough. That is always rough in the beginning. But if you can get used to sitting with it longer each time, you can make baby steps to maybe not having to do it as much, or maybe having to do it little by little, or not at all eventually. But I'll turn it over to Mollie. I've rambled enough.
No, I think you said that really well. And I think that the question, is that bad? I mean, if it's not, like you said, if it's not impeding in your daily life, then maybe it's not that bad. But if you are repeating these words because, like you said, it makes your anxiety go down, or it, brings you some sort of peace, then it is probably a compulsion. And just like any other compulsion, ERP, exposures and response prevention is the way to kind of get through that. But yeah, I mean, everything else you said, I'm like so distracted with the reflection. I can't handle it. I was wondering if you had any advice on dealing with metacognition OCD, thinking about being able to think. Yeah, that's something I have definitely experienced. And I would say the advice, which you guys are all going to get very sick of hearing us say, but exposure and response prevention is with a licensed professional. They will be creative with you and find ways to expose yourself to that. It's hard when it is mental compulsions. A lot of times people find that people start their journey into therapy thinking this is impossible. You can't do an exposure for something that is mental. But that's not the case there. You just have to get a little bit more creative in certain ways to kind of allow those uncomfortable feelings to exist.
So what exactly is metacognition OCD? I'm not really.
So yeah, like having obsessions about your obsessions, basically. So okay. I've heard people all say, like, what's that?
It's all internal that you're.
Yeah, I think most of the compulsions would be. Like I've heard someone explain, like they wake up in the morning and before they even start thinking about their day, they have these fears that their anxiety is going to impact their, job or their relationship that day, whatever it is.
Yeah, no, I'm in there.
Yeah. So it's basically, being anxious about the possibility of being anxious.
Yeah. No, that's pretty much a daily occurrence. So yeah. I didn't know I didn't know what that was, but that's pretty much.
No, and I think it is one of those that's hard to even describe, because it's like, it's like obsessions about obsessions, and I might not even be really describing it well. That's personally what I've experienced. But I think anyone who has had OCD has probably had this type of OCD because, that's the way our brains work. We want to kind of figure out why we're thinking like this or what it means about us. But at the end of the day, as we know, it is OCD. So it is treated.
Keeps us on our toes. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Very much so. So this is not something I'm super familiar with retroactive jealousy as a form of ROCD.
If I recall correctly, and I may be wrong on this, and please call me out. That's where you're thinking about your partners and you're jealous of either the relationships they've had before or the experiences they've had before in relationships. You're jealous of past partners or if they've been happy or other things like that. I've been on both sides of ROCD before, whether it's someone either not trusting me or me not trusting someone else for whatever reason. Both sides suck, to put it lightly, because you have that doubt in yourself and that person, and it's tough to just completely trust someone. I mean, that's just given. There's always going to be something that makes you question something they do or something. It just depends on how much you go down that rabbit hole. But it's the thing I always try to remember is that it sounds bad to say so what? Like, that Dr. McGrath and there like always says, like, so what if this happens, or so what? You can't control the future. If something happens with you and your partner, you can't control it. Like, things are going to happen. If you're meant to be with them, you're meant to be with them. Like, no one knows what's going to happen in the future. But the thing is, if you've done everything you can and you've been true to yourself and true to them, it's not your fault. Like, don't blame yourself in advance for something that may happen. And it's one of those things that's always, I think a lot of people have it more than they realize. I think a lot of people have this where they'll question like something little and make something huge about it. And it makes sense to them. And I get it because I've been there. But at the end of the day, you can never be, it's hard to say, you never be 1,000,000% sure that things are going to work out. There's no, I mean, OCD hates the gray area. You can't flip a card over and go, yep, it's going to work out with this person. No, it's not. Like, you're not going to flip the coin and find the answer. There's always going to be a gray area, and it doesn't want that at all. And as long as there is a gray area for anything, it's going to find a way to eat away at you for that. And if someone you care about, it's going to latch on to what you care about most. And that person is going to be what it doubts most. And especially with ROCD, it's not going to let up on that. And the thing you have to realize, when you realize it is the ROCD doing it, you say, so what? I'm happy with this person. I'm happy now. I'm doing the best I can. They're doing the best they can. Like, leave me alone. I'm just going to enjoy it now. As terrible as that may sound, that's probably the best way to go through it, because you're not putting it on yourself. You're not putting it on them. You're not giving into the OCD, because giving into the OCD and the doubt is what's going to perpetuate it and make it even worse. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. And I always think, I mean, obviously there could be a point where it would be detrimental, but I always think being open with your partner is going to be helpful in any type of therapy, but especially when the OCD is latching on to that relationship or to that person. I think it is really beneficial for them to be aware of that and to know, it doesn't excuse your behavior, but it does explain it a little bit when and if things get bad or you're difficult. It kind of gives a little bit more of a reason of like, hey, this is a mental illness I'm dealing with. This is how it shows for me.
And yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's one of the big things is as long as you're open and honest with your partner, and you're back and forth, like talking about your feelings and everything, like it's okay if you have doubts or something and you voice them with them and you talk it through. I mean, that's the big thing is if there's something bugging you, say it. Because if you don't, like the OCD is going to eat away at you and go, well, why did she or why did he do this? And then it's going to keep going over and over in your head. And it's like, okay, rather than just stay up on that thinking about it, just ask them like, well, why did you do this? And then get it out in the open. I think that's the big thing.
I agree. Yeah. Hi from Iran. That is exciting. That's cool. I love when people say where they are messaging in from. Can people with ROCD be involved in successful relationships? Absolutely.
Yes.
And for people who don't know, ROCD is relationship OCD, which is when your OCD obsessions center around your relationships. They can be romantic relationships or they can be platonic relationships. It can be, the relationship you have with your dentist. It doesn't have to be a relationship in the sense that people, typically think of relationships. But yes, you absolutely can be in a successful relationship and have OCD centered around that relationship. It's challenging, but it is definitely manageable. Yeah, no,
I agree. Because like I said, I am in a great relationship now, and I've had issues with ROCD in the past to varying degrees, and this is like the one time that I don't have like those doubts that I used to have all the time. I don't have them with her, which is because I'm open and honest, and we can just talk about stuff. So that's a big thing with it, and it's definitely something. So don't be discouraged.
Absolutely. And again, like we were saying, just be open in your relationships, and people will, if somebody is not going to want to be in your life because you have a mental illness, then that's probably a good person to say goodbye to anyway. But that, that's just our opinions. Does OCD cause physical sensations like anxiety does, palpitations, shortness of breath, etc.? Yeah. Had all of them.
Yep. Been there many times.
Stomach issues, anything, you name it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a big one. Yeah. Feeling nauseous. That's a very big one. Yeah. Getting like the paralytic, like you get paralyzed in public trying to do something like that thought of I can't go past doing a certain thing. Yeah. Absolutely. Like they go hand in hand a lot of times. I mean, it's tough sometimes to figure out where the anxiety and the OCD, which one is causing which. Because they feed into each other. So all the above, not good times.
And then I know you had mentioned earlier, like I know for some people who have other mental illnesses as well, that I'm assuming has got to feed into that in some ways, like depression, for example, where you don't want to do anything or you feel like you can't, move. And then you have the anxiety that's like, go, go, go. And I can imagine that is challenging to have, those two kind of differing voices, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I mean, they definitely all kind of feed each other, which is tough sometimes because, I mean, you may be controlling one like ADHD or anxiety or whatever, and then something else will spike up the other one. So when, like for a while, I had the OCD pretty good on control, and then the ADHD spiked up, which caused the anxiety to spike up, which caused the OCD to spike up. And that will happen. And so it's kind of like a balancing or more like a juggling act sometime with them. But it's just, you just have to do it. So you try as best you can. But yeah, it definitely can. It definitely will cause those sensations. That's for sure.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Can obsessions make you lose passion and desire to do things in your life? I feel like all I am is my obsessions, no hobbies, motivations, desires. Does this get better with treatment?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. All of those questions.
Yes. I know for a while I had a big problem with trying to get motivated to do anything. especially in the beginning of the day, because I was so worried about getting every step right through the day that I would get like, paralysis through analysis. Like I couldn't even get started because I would be like negative 20 steps behind where I wanted to be. And so I couldn't get motivated to do much. And it sucked. Like it was like I didn't want to do much at all. I wasn't like that before. And yeah, it definitely does get better with treatment. It helps a lot. I think one of the big things is recognizing everything, like all the subtypes of OCD is a big thing. And everything you do every day that you don't realize is because of or an effect of your OCD. Like a lot of things I didn't make sense why I did them. I just thought I was different. But then realizing as I started going through an OCD and talking to Mollie and talking to Alex and then Robin, I realized, and like now I can see when OCD is starting to cause an issue, and I try to mitigate it. Like I will sometimes be like I will say out loud, like, no, like I'm not doing that, or I'm not falling into that again. Like don't give into that. Which sounds weird, but it's when you're cognizant of everything that's going on, you can realize the parts of your life that are affected by it. It definitely gets a lot better because they said intrusive thoughts are going to happen. Everyone has them, whether you have OCD or not. It's just to what degree they happen and what degree you let them affect you. I mean, that's the big thing, is how they affect you. And when you can actually manage them and go about your life and just accept that they're going to be there and just don't pay them any mind and be like, yeah, whatever, I'm not listening to you. That's when it starts feeling a lot better. And then you'll start and you need to celebrate and be proud of when you can actually get through those hurdles. But yeah, it will get better with treatment. And yes, I feel you because I've been there, where the obsessions will just take over. They'll flood your mind and you will not want to do anything. And your, motivation goes down the toilet. But it will get better. Treatment definitely helps. ERP definitely helps. Realizing what you're dealing with and what you're suffering from, especially if it's something besides OCD, because maybe OCD is an underlying cause. Getting to that underlying cause is really what helps you. So, yeah, I definitely encourage you seek treatment or seek help, whatever you need to do. Yeah, enough rambling for me.
Yeah, and I think that separating yourself from the OCD will be helpful as well. Because I do remember a time where I thought I was my OCD and that was it. Like that made up my entire personality. So I would say find the things that you want to do, even if the OCD is loud. I know it can be hard to start something new, especially I know for myself, I was dealing with a lot of just right compulsions, and starting anything was terrifying because what if I didn't start it right and then the entire thing is ruined and I might as well just throw it away. And that can be really hard when it comes to doing something fun like a new hobby. So I would say try to figure out, what you actually care about, what you value, and like Brian said, kind of try to ignore the OCD as much as you can, and still do those things that you enjoy, that bring you joy. And hopefully you can look back and kind of realize, it was the OCD holding you back. A lot of good questions here. All right. OCD has made me hyper focus on the way that I feel emotionally, constantly checking, ruminating, and desiring to feel good. It's very automatic and constant. How do I stop? So that's kind of like what we were saying earlier, like the obsessions, the thinkings around how you feel, how you think. And I would say to get with a professional to help you work on exposures for that. A lot of acceptance, I think, will be important, of accepting that we can have emotions that we don't want. We can, for lack of a better word, have these bad emotions, and still do the things that we want to do, even if we don't feel good, whatever that even means, feel good.
I know for me, one of the things I would do, well, I say I would do, but I know I still do, is as far as like the checking, ruminating, desiring to feel good, I would do something which may sound silly, but like I would, if I got something new, or if I got something like, whether it's a game controller or something, like I would read and try to make sure, like if I memorized it line for line, it made me feel better for some reason. I don't know why. Because, a lot of OCD, why it does that, but because I knew exactly what it was and there wasn't any doubt, like I knew what the message was, I knew what this meant. And whether it's like an article or something, like if I could repeat it verbatim, it somehow made me feel better. Not sure why, but it was something that I would do over and over again. Like, oh, let me just reread that to make sure it's good. And it was something that used to be like really bad. Like I would have to go back and reread something many, many times to make sure that like I knew what it was. And whether it's like the hyperfocusing is something more ADHD like, but it's that constant reassurance of I got this, or I'm feeling good because of reason X or whatever. And maybe that's something that you're talking about. That it's like, it's more reassurance than like to feel good. It's that you got something to a certain degree where they have it perfect or something, which means maybe more perfectionism or, just right. And it's accept the fact that nothing will, you're never going to have anything perfect. Nothing will ever be. And that's something it's funny because I know some of my like friends' kids are like that too, where they want something to be perfect. And I'm like, it's never going to be perfect. It's okay if it's not going to be perfect. And I've had that with my kids too. Like they want something to be just perfect. And I'm like, I get it because I've been that way before. Like we got to get this just right. But I'm like, it's okay. Like it doesn't have to be. Like we're not making, like the Lego set doesn't have to be just right. It's okay. If we're missing like a gray piece and we put a blue one, no one's gonna care. It's okay. But I would say just accept the fact that there's going to be uncertainty. The big thing that we always keep trying to drive home is there's going to be uncertainty. There's going to be uncomfortableness, and you have to accept that because nothing is ever 100% certain ever. And if you're constantly the ruminating and constantly checking is just your compulsion over and over again. And the more you do it, the more you reinforce it, and the worse it's going to get over time. So it's one of those things that if you can do it, start, making it less and less the way you do it, or how often you do it, or how much time you spend on it, then eventually it'll get better and you don't feel the need to do it. And that will probably help you. I mean, it will help you. That's a form of ERP that will help you to not do it all the time and not spend so much time. Maybe it's only 5 minutes, but for those of us, it's been like an hour or more that it gets bad. So the less you can do it, the better. And if you can nip it in the bud early, then you should.
Yeah. What he said. How do I deal with needing constant reassurance from others?
That's a good question. It's one that we all always want reassurance, whether it's, I will still find to this day, Molly, like I will repeat something to someone to get like confirmation that like I said that, even though I know I did, like I'll rephrase it to say it. And it's like reassurance that I don't realize I'm doing, but it's something that I've always done because try to get that, like, yes, you did a good job, or yes, you did this right, or you said this right, you figured this out. That's one of the hardest things to do is to not get reassurance because OCD wants us to doubt. So the only way to not doubt is it says, oh, seek reassurance. And then, you feel better about yourself, or do a compulsion and you'll feel better about yourself temporarily. I say the big thing is to try to realize, like, it's hard to say this, like, you don't need the reinsurers. Like,
Mhm.
be confident in yourself, which is not an easy thing to do, because OCD is going to be like, yeah, no, I'm not going to let that happen. It's the trying to tell yourself, like, listen, it's okay. I may not be sure of something I did, or I may not be confident of something, but that's okay. Like, it's okay to be uncertain. Asking, and I think that's one of the main things with the support system is not, like, telling them not to give into your asking for reassurance, because when they do, they just make it worse. And that's the hardest thing to do, because most people want to, like, they think you need it, but for them to tell you, like, no, I'm not going to tell you that. Nope. I'm not going to walk away. Like, that's a hard thing for them to do, because they don't want to hurt you. And that's a good way to do it, though, when you tell people, like, don't, no matter what I do, if I ask you to give me confirmation, give me reassurance, don't do it. That's one way to do it, because it's like they don't feed into that. But that's certainly not an easy thing to get over at all.
No.
With those, I mean, normal people may have an issue, but us, those of us with OCD definitely is something we crave. That we're gonna crave that from OCD, and it's not easy at all.
Yeah, and I know that OCD is so sneaky, because you can tell, the people around you, hey, when I ask this type of question, or when I phrase something this way, please don't give me reassurance. But then you're going to think of some other way to ask for reassurance. And that's just the way OCD works, is it will, weasel its way in anywhere it can. But yeah, I think, like you said, being transparent with your people in your life, in your life, and saying, this is what I'm going through. And when you provide me with this, it may feel like it's helping, but in the long run, it actually is hurting. And explain that cycle of, reassurance is just like any other compulsion. You do it, it feels better. It brings your anxiety down for a little bit, and then, until the next time, and it always comes back. And next time you might need to ask them twice, or you might need to, word it differently, or whatever. So I would say, again, that needing constant reassurance, we don't actually need it. It is the compulsion that makes us feel like we need it in that moment. But have some compassion for yourself, because it's hard. It's hard when when it's like, oh, this can't hurt me. It's just a simple question. There's always one more. OCD is never satisfied.
Yeah, there's never enough. There's always one more, or a dozen more, or 2 dozen more. Like,
exactly. Yeah, I've heard like reassurance specifically being compared to like a toddler that is just like won't leave you alone. Which obviously I would not recommend this for children, but like your toddler, your OCD is going to just keep coming back. And if you don't give it, even if you do give it what you want and you give into that compulsion, it is going to come back.
I was going to say that now that you said that, it's kind of like letting the toddler cry itself to sleep.
Yeah.
Like to sleep through the night. It's kind of like that. You have to just, it's going to be bad, but you have to just try to ignore it.
Yeah.
And then it'll get better eventually.
Please do not take parenting advice from us.
Yeah.
All right, let me see. Oh, I like this question. It's because it's spicy. How do you handle perfectionism? And then she wrote underneath OCD. And I mean, like we've been saying, any type of exposure where you can not be perfect on purpose. I know for myself, when I was in school was really challenging for me, because I would always rewrite my notes and then write them again and then write them again. And there was never enough times that I could rewrite them. And I had no idea that I had OCD when I was in school. This was years later that I actually received treatment. But looking back, I know that is the exposure I would have done, is writing it once and not writing it again, or purposely, making one letter bigger than the rest, or whatever it is. If you have perfectionism with making your bed, then put the pillow at the foot of the bed tonight. Or tomorrow. just make yourself anxious, make yourself uncomfortable.
Do it on purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, the same way, because I've had that where things have to be perfect and I have to get everything set up in order to do something. It's got to be laid out perfect. Or if I try to make a video or something, like I have to rehearse it or get everything right. And then it'd be like half the day's gone and I haven't gotten it done yet. And I just needed, like, things had to be just right. And so I think one of the first things that, I think it was Alex, my OCD, my original OCD therapist, told me was she had me go in, and because I had to have like stuff just right in the bathroom with like the magazines and stuff, and she's like, just throw them around and walk away. And I did. I just flung magazines, like my car and drivers, around and just flung them and walked away. And that was one of the things that she's like, and don't go back and just see what that's like. And then I started to realize, I'm like, what am I doing? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't care. I don't have to have these in order. I don't, but it's it's hard to do because your mind wants you to have it in a certain order. And I've had that too, where if like I want to get, say, 5 things done in the morning, and if I can't get like number 2 done, I get stuck and can't go on to number 3. And it's the fact that you have to pivot and go, listen, it's not going to happen. Like, either I don't get anything done the rest of the day, or I just move on. And it's trying to make it imperfect, like on your own. And so you get used to it, or like make sure, have someone else do it. That was the one thing I found too, is like I have my daughter do something and I was like, don't tell me what you did, but just mess things up like on purpose. And don't tell me you did it. Like that way I have to wonder. I also have to wonder, like, okay, what got rearranged? Is something out of order? And I'm like, just do it and don't tell me. And that was one of the best ERPs because I never knew. Like maybe things got out of order, maybe they didn't, maybe things don't. But it's trying to realize that it's okay. Things are not perfect, and that's okay. They don't have to be. And that's getting used to the imperfectness and just being able to sit with it and be like, you know what, I'm okay. It's not affecting me. The world's not stopped turning. Like, it's okay is probably the best thing to do. And that's, like we say, it's always ERP that does it.
Yeah. And I like what you said earlier, that perfectionism doesn't really exist. I mean, there isn't really anything that is perfect. That's not really, there's no reason to strive for that if we can't achieve that. We can achieve progress. We can achieve, better than yesterday and more successes, but there is no such thing as perfect. So progress, makes, or what's the saying? Practice makes progress, not perfect. So, you can do better than you did before, but you can't be perfect. And that can be scary to accept, but that's true. I mean, no one is.
No, sure.
Yeah. Have either of you experienced groinal responses, and how did you handle them? So for anyone who isn't aware of what that is, groinal response is basically when you have a thought about whatever and you get a reaction down there. For lack of better words, it does not mean you are aroused by this thought. It just means you have a body and you reacted, physically to something. When it comes to OCD and anxiety, a lot of people get obviously very anxious about these things because that happened in response to looking at a child or to looking at, something that isn't sexual in nature, and their body reacted in a sexual, response. As easy as it is, as kind of an outsider speaking about this, I know it is obviously really difficult when it's happening, when it's, when you're in the heat of it. I would say to, remind yourself, like I was just saying, that it's not you, it's not what you value or what means anything to you. It is just your body reacting to something. When when your eyes blink or when you hiccup, you don't question why you did that. It's just kind of part of being a human with a body. that's, yeah. And again, that's so much easier said than done, but that would be kind of my go-to advice.
Yeah. I mean, say the big thing is that OCD, don't let OCD try to make you read more into it than there is. I mean, a lot of times you have a response, you wake up, you're going to have responses, or like something may get you in a dream or something else. It doesn't mean that you want the dream to be there. It doesn't mean that you want the reaction. It's just your body responds to the stimulus. That's the way it is. And a lot of times, especially if, like you said, if you're sleeping or something, it's an unconscious thing that happens. But OCD wants you to read more into it than you should. And it's going to keep bugging you because it wants you to give it an answer. Like, this is because of this. Because like, am I good? Am I bad? Like, it wants the black and white and it hates the gray. So I would say, yeah, don't try not to read more into it. I guess is the best I can say it, because things happen. Your body has responses to anything. I mean, this is a different example, but like I had my puppy out with me earlier. The wind hit her and she peed all down my side when I was carrying her with her. She didn't mean to do that, and it wasn't something she planned on it. It was just the way her body responded when the gust of wind hit her. I don't blame her. She didn't know what was going on. She was as surprised as I was. It's something that happens. Like, it's kind of like that. Your body responded. Don't read into it or try to put too much thought into why it happened. It happens. Things happen that we don't control, whether it's like it could be, any stimulus that causes things to happen. A response happens, and don't try to read too much into it, I guess is all I can say. And your OCD is going to want you to. So we all have had ridiculous intrusive thoughts that, we come out of nowhere. One that we wish we didn't have, but it's the fact when you can say, listen, that's not me. It's just a thought. I'm not going to put any stock into it because that's not me. That's not who I am. And that's really the important thing to remember. Like, it's an intrusive thought. It's going to happen. Just try to let it pop in and pop out again.
Yeah. Like you said, like any obsession or intrusive thought that we have, the more we assign meaning to it, the more we focus on it, the more we try to solve it, the more the stress it's going to cause. If we can allow it to just be there and say, hey, I see you for what that is, and kind of go about our day. Obviously easier said than done, but that's kind of the goal, is to let it just be there and not really pay attention to it, like the annoying toddler.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously we cannot diagnose you, Kyle, or, provide any clinical answers. But I would say that, again, OCD latching onto fears of becoming schizophrenic absolutely is a thing. That is a form of OCD, is fears of becoming more mentally ill or becoming, having a different mental illness. So I would say, from what I know of OCD, that sounds like it could fit right into there. But it also could just be anxiety.
Yeah, no, and I will say the constantly doing research of it, that is definitely a big key for OCD, is typically even before being diagnosed or even after, you go searching for different subtypes you have. And you can go down massive rabbit holes into trying. And we've all kind of done it. Like, oh, I think I have that one too. I have that one too. I have that one too. I don't think that one's been discovered yet, but I think I have this. You can go down some massive ones. So yeah, like trying to worry about other disorders you may have because of the comorbidity with OCD and everything. That's a common thing. We've all kind of done that. And tried to research what else may be wrong, or what is the root cause. I mean, that's one of the things too, is OCD causing something, or is it anxiety causing something? Like, what's the bottom line of what is causing what? And a lot of them, like I said, you have more than one a lot of times, and that's common. But it's trying to find out, especially if you haven't been diagnosed with all of them, trying to figure out on your own, it can be a dangerous thing, because then you're going to start manifesting those in your mind, like, well, maybe I have this or maybe I have that. And then OCD is going to keep you up at night thinking, well, did I do this? And when I was 10, this happened. Maybe that means this. And you can go down a dangerous path with that. Just be careful, because one of the things is checking over and over again to do research is a compulsion in itself. That's something that if you spend all your time trying to find out like what may be the cause of something, and that's in its own compulsion that gets worse and worse over time too.
And I would say, yeah, I mean, honestly, just like, again, anything can be a compulsion. Trying to diagnose yourself, trying to determine if this is your, if this set of symptoms fit your set of symptoms, that could be a compulsion. And at the end of the day, I mean, if we call it OCD or we call it anxiety, whatever you want to call it, if it is negatively impacting your daily living, that's, to me, that's enough of a reason that you should want to get help, or, in some type of support group or something, so you can get a better understanding of this.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, that's a big thing. Like Mollie said, when it's impacting your daily life, like that is something, like if people can wonder, like, do I have this? Do I have that? It's like when it affects you going about your day, like you really need to go get you, even if it's just calling to try to figure out what you got. That's when you should make a change, because otherwise it's going to get worse. It's not going to get any better.
Yep. Hi, Zoe. How long does recovery take when you are working hard to disregard OCD and do ERP every day? Good question. That is, I don't know if anyone has that answer. It really will depend on you, on your symptoms, on your needs, on how often you're meeting with your therapist. I think that's impossible to answer, to be totally honest.
I would say one of the big things is don't get discouraged if you slip back, because you're going to have slip ups. That's just going to happen. You could be doing fantastic, and it could be an outside stressor. It could be like something else happens. You may have random stuff pop up. Like OCD likes to be like the leak in a dam. You plug it popped out somewhere else. So you can take care of all these compulsions, and one may pop up that you haven't thought about in years or is completely new. It's going to happen because OCD wants your attention. It's like, hey, over here, come pay attention to me. You need me. So when you slip, don't get discouraged, because a lot of people, if they slip up, think they're going back to step one. You're not going back to square one. That's not how it works. You've made progress. And the big thing is be proud of yourself for every little incremental step you make. Whether it's, hey, I sat with this for 5 minutes. I sat with it for 10 minutes. I didn't give in to compulsions for this, or I didn't think about this. Like every little step you make counts. And you may have a day where it's just, you've had a crappy day. Like you got a flat tire, I don't know, your engine blew up, a meteor fell from the sky, hit something, I don't know. But you've had like a terrible day and your OCD is through the roof. It doesn't mean tomorrow can't be better. Like tomorrow you can start over again. You didn't lose any of that progress. It's just that you had a bad day. You slipped back. Like that happens. Like so don't take that as you got to start over again. You're going to have slip ups. But as long as you keep chipping away at it, it will get better. But you can't let up, because if you don't keep up with ERP, even if it's like, you don't have to do it the same amount every day. You don't have to do the same. I mean, you can think of different ways to do ERP. And that's one of the good things with the therapist. Like you can come up with creative ways to make it different each way. And some of it may be, opportunistic, like something you didn't plan on. You did ERP because of something that popped up while you were somewhere, and you're like, hey, I can do this. Like, hey, I'm at a mall and I'm, I don't like this scenario happening, but I'm going to force it anyway because I'm here. That like some of those can be the best ways to try to overcome it, because it's something that happens in real life, that it's not just a practice thing. You practice in your safe environment is definitely great. But if you do something out like that, that's fantastic, because you didn't plan on it. It was there. And so you try to take advantage of it. And so it's always going to be a constant struggle, but it will get better. And you just cannot, you may be able to relax or maybe not have to do ERP as much, but just every once in a while, remind yourself. And that's one of the things like with this is doing these, it helps remind me of like all the issues I have and, you know, practice what you preach and do like, this helps me to keep up with it and answering people's questions on the app and stuff like that helps me to keep doing it. That's kind of my ERP some days too. So I would say like the length of time is going to vary. Depends how many subtypes you have, depends on how long it's been going on. There's no real good answer, but the thing is, as long as you keep working at it, it will get better. It will get better over time as long as you keep at it and don't give up and don't get frustrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think ERP is like a lifestyle, not I mean, obviously it is a therapy, but it's not something you can just do in your therapy sessions and then be done. You know, it is something that is lifelong. And I think, you know, sometimes hearing that OCD is a chronic illness can be really discouraging because that means it's not going anywhere. But I kind of counter that by saying that ERP is also lifelong. It is something that, like you said, you're in the mall and you get triggered and, you know, the old you might have shut down and left and been too scared to stay. But now that you have these skills that you've learned in therapy, you can apply them when you are anxious. And that's what's really cool, I think, about this type of therapy is the things you learn are applicable across all different types. You know, it's not, they don't go anywhere and they're not just for that one theme or subtype.
Yeah. Like you said, and that's the thing is ERP will work for whatever subtype you have. It doesn't matter. And if you're doubting that someone else has had the same compulsions or anything that you've had, someone has. I guarantee they have.
Yep, absolutely. And to follow up with some more recovery questions, how does recovery look like? Does recovery mean you will not have those intrusive thoughts anymore?
Nope.
No? Not the answer.
They want it to. I like to liken it as though they're more in the background. Like the intrusive thoughts are there, but they're in the background, and you don't have to pay attention to them. They're not like in your face that you're only focused on that and you can't move on. I still have them, and they may not bother you for a while. I've had some that I haven't had in a while, and some that just pop up randomly. But when they do, I'm just thinking, yeah, whatever. Like they don't bug me as much. That's really recovery is like getting when you can quantify, like instead of spending an hour checking the locks before I left every day, now maybe I check it twice or I don't some days. Like that's a big deal. It may not seem like a lot of people may not think that, but when it's something that consumes your day that doesn't consume it anymore, that's what recovery looks like. Like when you realize consciously, I know what OCD, like you realize when OCD is kicking in and you can kind of push it back and be like, all right, no, you're not doing this again. Like I'm not, you're going to slip. You're going to have issues. Like some days are going to be worse than others, but it's going to be better than you've had it before. That to me is recovery. Like when you can see that you're taking like steps to take, you know, your day back, take your life back. That's to me what recovery looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point that you can't really see it when you're in it. Like you can look back and say, you know, I was really struggling here, or I was doing really well here, but it's hard when you're actually in that place. So yeah, I would say to keep track of your progress and celebrate those wins is huge. I think, yeah, I mean, I think something that's interesting about OCD is that everyone has intrusive thoughts. That's not an OCD specific thing. Every person that has a working brain has had thoughts that are weird, don't make sense, go against their values. You know, that's just part of being a human. So I think that can be reassuring in a healthy way, to know that the thoughts aren't the problem and the thoughts are not, you know, the goal of ERP is not to get rid of the thoughts or to stop these intrusive thoughts. The goal is to live with them and still do the things that we want to do. So I would say for myself, being in recovery, again, it is, I think, lifelong. There's no end destination. It's kind of an ongoing journey, but I would say being able to still do the things that I love, that I enjoy, that I want to do, being the one to be in the driver's seat, so to speak, instead of my anxiety. So that's what I would say recovery looks like for me. Everyone obviously will have different goals of what they want out of therapy, but I would say going into it with the goal to get rid of your intrusive thoughts is going to be a losing game.
Yeah, I think the main thing is to keep in mind when you realize that you are not your intrusive thoughts, like they're not you, you're not them. That's not what you want. They're just thoughts. Like everyone, like Mollie said, everyone has those thoughts, but the fact that most people can just like toss them away, like don't pay any mind to them. That's the big win. The big recovery is that when you realize like, hey, you're not me. You're a thought I didn't ask for. You just popped in here. You're like, get out of here. That's a big thing. Because I mean, if you start focusing on them, you give them more, they become more tangible, more something that you focus on more and more in OCD. Because I used to have that. Like I would focus a lot of times ruminating in my head, like, okay, this means I'm a bad person because of this, or I thought about this. That must mean that. They're just a thought. Everyone has them. Like recovery is when you can deal with them and not let them affect your day because you realize this is a normal thing. Everyone has these, but that doesn't mean that's me. It doesn't define me and it doesn't have to. I can still go about my day.
Yeah, I agree. How many exposures should people do per day? That will be completely dependent on you, and everyone's treatment will look so different because everyone's anxiety is different and everyone's OCD is different. There obviously are a lot of similarities, but the way that your therapist works with you on exposures will not be the same as the way that that therapist works with the next person. So that's not really an answer, but
yeah, no, I mean, I would tend to say as many as you feel comfortable doing, depending on which one, because the more you can do each day, and like Mollie was saying, it depends on what your compulsions are, what your obsessions are. And especially if it's something that is something in real life you can practice, it might make it easier. Like if something happens, like out and about, like you find some event presents itself that you didn't expect, and it's like, hey, I can, make ERP out of this. Sometimes that happens. And that's the best way because that's real life ERP that you can use over and over again because it's something you don't have planned. It's just something that may pop up. I would say if you can handle it, as many as you can do, but don't try to force yourself. The worst thing you can do is force yourself because that anxiety is gonna spike and it's gonna be bad, especially in the beginning. There's no way around it because OCD doesn't like when you mess with it. And if you're not feeding it your doubt or your anxiety, it's gonna ratchet it up and be like, okay, you're not gonna feed me, fine, I'm gonna make you feel worse.
Just like that toddler.
The OCD beast is the bully is going to try to fight back. But I would say whatever you feel comfortable with, the more, the better. But at the same time, don't push yourself because your anxiety may get really bad. And you may find out don't push it to like a panic attack type thing. Like start small and start with something that is your, least anxiety provoking ERP, something that doesn't bother you that much. Start with the small things and work your way up. If you start at the top, it might get really bad. Start with something small that doesn't really cause you much anxiety and start doing exposures for that. And then work your way up and get a feel for how comfortable you are with it. And then maybe work yourself up to something that's a little bit more anxiety inducing.
Yeah, makes sense to me. And I think it looks like it is 9:00, so I will end it with, I don't know where this last hour went. But Yeah, I just wanted to leave that one up there because it is hard. It is hard to have OCD.
Yeah.
It is difficult to talk about it a lot of times. So knowing that you, like all of you listening, are not alone, but then also for Brian and myself, doing this is an exposure in itself. And being able to talk about this, these things that we've experienced, being on the other side of things, it is very nice, I think, to connect with others who get it, because not everyone does.
Yeah. And I mean, the main thing is you're not alone. So just remember, whether it's watching live streams or looking at posting on the app or whatever you do, you're not alone. So don't feel ashamed. Don't feel like you're solitary. There's like no one can understand, because no matter what your obsession, your compulsion is, someone's dealt with it. And don't be afraid to tell your therapist, because they've heard it before. It's one of those things. Be honest and open with your therapist. Be honest and open with your support system. That is the key. If you can be open with them, because they're really your rock to lean on. And they will help keep you in check when you're not doing your therapist. You have your therapy sessions or your ERPs, and they can help you with ERP too. I mean, they can do that. I've had my girlfriend help me with them, because she knows that I have issues. I mean, I know I hide them well, but she knows everything I have going on, and she can help me with them. And she knows to bring me back and be like, hey, hold on, like, listen, come back. Like, it's okay. And she'll bring me back to reality. And I think that's one of the big key things, is to have a good support system, be honest with, those you care about and those that are trying to help you, and just realize that it's going to be something you're going to have to spend time working on. It's not going to change overnight. And OCD is going to make you doubt whether you have it. It's the only disease I can think of where it makes you doubt you have it, even after you've been diagnosed. It's going to go, nah, we don't have that. I can't think of a single other one that makes you doubt it when you have been diagnosed with it. It's hard, but you're not on your own. You have people who understand, and like, feel free, put comments in the app or put questions. Don't ever feel afraid to put questions out there, because someone will answer. One of us will answer something, or someone else may answer from around the world that you didn't know felt the same way you did. So just hang in there and stay strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Dr. McGrath is next on Wednesday. So if anybody has a question that's going to get answered, come back Wednesday. And Brian and I will be back here in 2 weeks, I think. But
yep, 21st, I believe. Yep.
Yes, that sounds right. But thank you, Brian, for being here. Thank all of you for asking questions.
Thanks for coming in, and thanks for asking all the great questions. Unfortunately, we can't answer all of them, but we try to do the best we can.
Have a good night, guys.
Take care. Bye.